Hi, everybody. Paula's coming. It's 3:30, so we'll call the meeting to order. And has everyone had a chance to review the agenda and the addendums to the agenda? Yes, yes. And are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Going once, twice, we're good. And Steve sends his regrets for this afternoon. So whatever decisions we make, we have his blessing. So this is good. Adoption of the previous minutes, and those would be the minutes of our November 10th meeting. Can I have someone move that, please? Councillor Roy, seconded by Councillor Posterero. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And is there any business arising from those minutes other than what we're doing today? Big business. Okay, so we have no public presentations. So we'll move on to 7.1, the 2021 draft budget. And our treasurer, Ms. Dent, will take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Just give me 2 secs here and I will share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that all right?
Yep.
Okay. So here we are, December 3rd, our next budget committee meeting. Today we're going to be looking at the draft 2021 operating and capital budgets. We're well ahead of our budget schedule, so if there's something major, we still have time, but hopefully we get through this today. So what I have given you, and most of you got that requested paper copies, I did give those to you. I hope everyone picked them up. But we do have today the 2021 draft capital budget, the operating budget, and some supporting information that goes along with our operating budget requests. And I've also included a copy of our estimated reserve and reserve funds for where I think we will be in 2021. So we're going to start with the capital budget, and if you have your sheets, I did number them. They're the ones that start with C1 is our summary, and we'll just go through each of the areas within that budget. So the first section deals with our facilities. So the budget committee did already recommend that $100,000 be included from the tax levy to address some of our facilities issues. And any additional funding for projects as they're identified through the review that we were doing with Tulloch Engineering, those would be funded from the facilities reserve. The only other big facility related project that's in here is the HVAC for the town hall, and we are proposing to apply for the ISIP COVID stream funding to pay for that project. So that would be $100,000 that we're eligible for that. We are proposing to purchase a smart board for council chambers. This would be something that would be very useful for a lot of things, but probably highest on the priority list would be for emergency management purposes. We do have funding remaining from our NWMO donation a few years ago, so we are proposing to fund the smart board from that money. I have put specifically in here so we know we haven't forgotten it. We had $36,575 in our prior year reserve for the Tourist Information Center. We were going to put that towards the window, so that is one thing. Additional funding for any other projects at the Tourist Information Center would be coming from the facilities reserve. Other facility things at the marina and museum area, looking for $5,000 to finish the boardwalk at the marina. The museum is proposing an outdoor shelter for the mill machinery. This is I think it's a 2-year project, but they are applying for grants for about $20,000 worth of the $30,000 funding for that. And they're also looking to purchase some storage racks for $5,000. So our total facilities capital ask is $284,575,000, and $120,000 of that is funded from the tax levy. We'll just go through, I think, all of the capital, if you're all okay with that, and then when we get to the end, we can have a where we think we need to be. On the next page, if you're following along, is water and wastewater. So we are proposing rehabilitation of 2 wells in 2021 for $70,000. The SCADA computer software, that was a project that was deferred from 2020. So that's been moved to 2021, that's $35,000. And that's a PUC request, as are the pump and the auto sampler for the sewage treatment plant. We also know that we'll be needing to do the sewer line across the highway between Haynes and Hawkins. We are proposing that that be funded from our OCF formula funding. We do have about $450,000 left from our 2020 allocation. And while we do know at this point what our 2021 funding will be, we have been asked to keep that amount confidential until the province makes the official announcement. So know that we will be getting OCF formula funding in 2021, and the amount will be forthcoming. So we're looking at a total for water of $105,000, a total for wastewater of $480,000. Only $30,000 of that $480,000 though is being requested from the tax levy. The next page in the capital budget is fleet and equipment. So you'll see there's 2 pickup trucks here, one for public works and one for parks. We are trying to replace some of our older vehicles. So there's a request there for 2 pickup trucks. The plow truck already has pre-budget approval for 2021, so that is a given. There's a proposed new sweeper for $300,000. New fire truck for $575,000, $220,000 of that would be funded from the fire truck reserve. And we already found $36,000 in the budget. I had a typo. The parks riding mower is not $40,000, it is $4,000. So that's a bit of a difference there. And then the shared tractor and attachments, so for $40,000, and that's a piece of equipment that would be shared between the parks, marina, cemetery, and allow us to deal with some of the more constrained areas within the cemetery that our bigger equipment can't currently get into. So total fleet and equipment, $1.285 million and $1,065,000 from the tax levy. Public Works, so we do have our annual surface treatment program. This year's, or 2021's proposal is for $304,000, $220,000 of that funded from our gas tax. Paved roads, this was the recommendation from the budget committee at the last meeting that $500,000 from the tax levy be dedicated to paved road improvements. Our annual sidewalk replacement is $50,000. We have a new estimate for our fuel card lock system at $100,000, and we've included $100,000 for pre-engineering to allow us to get a number of the bigger projects that we know we're going to need to get done, to get the engineering done so that we are ready to move if and when funding becomes available to do some of these projects. So our total for Public Works, $1,054,000 and $833,770 from the tax levy. The final page within the capital budget proposal is sort of our miscellaneous other things. So we have our ongoing niche expansion at the cemetery, a proposal to replace the signage over 2 years at the cemetery, so $10,600 in year 1. We have our ongoing building demolition at $50,000, our ongoing computer replacement at $10,000. There was a proposal brought forward earlier this year by the CAO for ongoing bear-proof trash cans to add to our inventory. So that is $8,000 a year. The next project that NSPG had identified for the dam was to upgrade the headgate winches. And then a couple of ball field related issues. So some fencing, year 1 of 4 for the town park ball field fencing, and to do some work at the Venturi Street ball field, $15,000 for year 1 of a 3-year project. The wayfinding signage here, $10,000. That is mostly to get some signage to help direct people away from the Jetty Street docks to our marina. That's what that's for. Playground equipment at Forest Glen, and a more permanent solution for the Boom Camp boat launch. So our total here is $182,900 from the tax levy. So where does that leave us all? So our target for 2021 tax funded capital should be in the neighborhood of $1.4 million. Currently, as presented, we're at 2.3. So we've exceeded our target by $887,000. I don't know if you want me to continue through the operating budget at this point and discuss possible cuts at the end, or if you would like to deal with some of the capital related issues right now.
What's easier for you, Sue?
Doesn't matter to me. They're two separate things, so if we want to deal with this and then we can deal with operating separately.
We can do that. Questions from the floor? And I can't see everyone, so and Councillor Postrero?
Yeah, so I just had a few quick questions. So we're talking about getting a smart board for the council chambers. Why do we desire such an expensive smart board? I know that it was the big thing in education a while ago, and now they sit dormant as just really expensive screens to project on. So I'm just wondering why we're spending $8,000 on a smart board when we could get, what is the need for it?
I might to the CAO, Katie.
Sorry about that technical difficulty. So we had looked at purchasing one previously. So when we have an emergency such as COVID or when we have the hospital emergency, this works with our emergency plan and our emergency management planning. So we may not use it all of the time, but there will be use for it. Ms. Dent put the $8,000 in there. I don't believe that it will be $8,000. That was the amount of money that's left in the NWMO funding envelope from a few years ago now. I believe it was 2017, maybe 2018, that we had that money allocated, and it was to purchase such a thing as a smart board. Actually, that was the request at the time, was to purchase a smart board. So that money is dedicated to purchasing things to offset administrative processes, specifically with regard to emergency management or training facilities. So that was the purpose of the money that we received.
Yeah, because the only benefit of a smart board is the interactive capabilities of it. And so really it's nothing more than a glorified white screen, to be honest. And I'm sure if you needed some, there's probably a few hundred of them in storage at Algoma District School Board, because they were super popular, and then nobody knows how to use them because they need extensive training to use them.
We can certainly cut that if that's the desire of council to cut that, but the money would have to stay within that pocket. It couldn't be used for anything other than administrative purposes.
And are there Councillor Roy and then Councillor Jay Dunbar? I have to keep changing screens.
There we go. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Of all the things, and I don't normally harp on Public Works, but we're looking at a plow truck, 2 trucks, one for them, one for Parks and Rec, and then of course the fire truck. The sweeper at 300K. I know that our sweeper isn't great, and I know we've bought used in the past and hasn't been great, but we've also bought a used truck to use as a water truck in the past, and it worked out well for us. The sweeper, brand new $300,000 sweeper, I can't see. I understand, we have to sweep the street. It's a safety issue. But I think that we can knock that down a bit, because we're already exceeding our target by almost $900,000 here. If we could cut that back to a used one for 100 grand even, then that's going to save us 200 on what we're exceeding right now. So just a thought. As I said, I don't want to harp on Public Works. I think that they do a good job. They deserve a decent piece of equipment, but I'm certain that we can find something out there, even though it goes beyond or outside of our purchasing policy. We've done it before and it has worked for us. So maybe we should take a look at that. Of all the things that I've seen in this budget, I think that was the one that really jumped out at me. So just a thought.
And Councillor J. Dunbar, followed by Councillor Summers, followed by Councillor B. Dunbar.
Yeah, I too also was looking at that sweeper. It was on my radar, and I agree with the past comments from Councillor Roy. My question is to Sue, I guess. In the water section, I guess, have we budgeted for engineering for the renewable source of water?
That could come out of our pre-engineering budget.
That could come out. Okay, so we haven't budgeted
We
for
haven't,
the engineering of renewable water source.
we haven't allocated that pre-engineering budget to any specific projects at this time, no.
Right. So how do we go about that?
Oh,
Katie's hand is up.
your head. Katie's waving her hand.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Katie.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. Sorry to interrupt you, Ms. Stemp, but we have already committed that the #1 priority will be the water, and we have retained SEMA Engineering to do the alternate water source. So we are
Thank you, Kate. Yeah,
intending
thank you,
to
Katie.
move forward with that.
All right.
Any other questions, Councillor J. Dunbar?
Nope, that's fine.
Moving over to Councillor Summers.
So the fuel card lock system. So am I to understand that's something that would be used at Public Works for the fuel use? Is that correct? Because I'm looking at that $100,000 for that. We don't even spend that much a year in fuel, from what I'm looking at. The 2019 actual was 92,000. This year we were down to 70,000. I'm just wondering if we could maybe put some money aside for this or something, like, rather than spend the whole 100,000 at once. That seems like a lot of money. I mean, I get it. It would be safer and it's easier to track and everything else, but it just seems like a lot of money for that. The other thing was, the fire truck. I'm just wondering if we can hold it off for one more year and put some more money in reserves and look at it again next year. That's the two things I was thinking of.
And Councillor B. Dunbar.
My only comment was the fuel card lock system as well. I just wondered if that could be deferred to another year.
Thank you for that. And I had some comments, a lot of comments actually. I'm questioning the Blind River Dam expenses right now because we've asked for a cost analysis in the past. I was hoping that we would have it for this meeting. I just don't want to be putting money into the dam until we can be assured that the revenue that the dam is supposed to be generating is in the town's best interest. So I'm hoping that we might find some money later on, but I'd like to put that one on hold. I was trying to look at the critical versus the not critical. The wayfinding signs is another one that I had on hold. The Bearwise containers, I know we had a lot of complaints in the spring about Bearwise, but then when I'm going around town, I'm seeing an awful lot of Bearwise. It's the people we need to be teaching how to use those Bearwise containers, because I do find garbage still. The Venturi Ballpark, I felt that we could hold off on that and let's finish off one ballpark at a time before we go on to another ballpark. Right now, we've got 2 pickup trucks. I would suggest that we get 1 pickup truck this year, and it's kind of like flip a coin, who's going to get it or whose need is greater. I'll leave that with you. I also had the fire truck. I know it's not the total of $375. I recognize that 2020 is coming from the fire reserve, but again, like the sweeper, I also had that. It's a lot of money, and you know, I'm just wondering, the same as Councillor Roy, if we couldn't find something a little bit cheaper. I know everyone's pointing the finger at the municipality of Huron Shores with their nice new fire truck and their nice new floors to house their fire trucks. So I just want to make sure that we've done due diligence in shopping. And as was noted with Councillor B. Dunbar and Councillor Summers, I was questioning the fuel lock as well, recognizing that we are 887 over. We do have to do some major cuts here, and those would be my recommendations. Are there any other comments? Sorry. Councillor Pastorero?
No problem. I was just wanting some clarification on what the outdoor shelter over mill machinery was for the museum section. Just what is that?
Perhaps we can have Ms. Bittner respond to that, as that falls under her area.
Sure, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Pastorero. The mill equipment that's at the former Timber Village Museum site is exposed to all of the elements right now. What we would like to do with Timber Village Museum writing grants is transfer that the priceless assets near their old home by the new Marina Museum and by their former logging site. With that, we need to create some canopies to protect them, or we're going to be moving these assets and they're going to continue to deteriorate. But as our treasurer noted, both curators are going to be looking for funding applications, and we already have very extensive reports that support the need for these structures. So that back work has already been completed.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Summers?
Just one question about the museum, because that was that trigged my memory. Thank you, Jen. Because I thought when we originally moved them over there, that was going to be a temporary thing. Did somehow it decide that somewhere it was decided that that was going to be a permanent move for them? Because I'm not really feeling really too good about that. I don't think that the museum area is quite big enough for what we, compared to what we had originally. And I'm just wondering what's happening with that.
Would you like me to jump in? Okay, so through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Summers. Right now, it's a temporary home, if you will. However, looking at the facility lineup of deficiencies that council is faced with repairing, the curators are well aware that their temporary home may be long-term. That said, council is also in the process of undertaking an exercise with engineers to look at your rezoning to make sure that you're commercial ready, and making sure that equipment is moved off property that is ideal highway commercial is in the best interest of council, the town of Blind River, as well as Timber Village Museum. So not only are we protecting our asset, we're also making sure that our property is available for potential investment. So it's not doing us any favors right now to leave it on the side of the highway deteriorating when we could be open for an investor to come to our municipality and incur those revenues and create jobs for the town.
Councillor J. Dunbar?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, pertaining to that, could we take those artifacts and I think we talked about this earlier, or we mentioned something about utilizing the some of the space over at the North Shore Power building. There's quite high ceilings in there, and I'm just wondering if there is a opportunity or a possibility of housing some of those inside that space.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Dunbar. If that is the appetite of council and the direction with the resolution, we can inquire what those fees would be for North Shore Power and bring back an MOU or a lease agreement if council wishes to enter into that, whether there's a dollar assigned where we would be paying North Shore Power or if it would be complementary space.
Thank you. And obviously size-wise too, right? I mean, I know it doesn't have an unlimited ceiling over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar, and I'd like to welcome Councillor Wells. I'm glad to see you were able to make it back from the Sioux in time. And do you have any comments that you wish to make on the overages of the capital budget?
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Not at the moment. I've been listening for a while. I think I finally got on the screen. But please continue.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on the capital budget? Sorry, Councillor Postriero, I'm jumping between one screen and the next. Go
No
ahead.
problem. Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Just a question. I didn't notice in any of these budgets, or if it's hidden somewhere else, maybe in another budget line, do we have anything for the demolition of the courthouse or the old museum facilities? Are those in the foreseeable future for the budget?
Through,
And I'll turn it over to our treasurer.
yeah, through you. We have been putting money into reserve for demolition, and we know that certainly the courthouse is going to have to come down, and the proposal would be any additional funds that we would need for that building would be coming from our facilities reserve. And once a decision is made about the actual old museum building, again, the proposal would probably be to fund that from the facilities reserve if we do decide that we're going to demolish it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on capital? Not seeing any, so moving on with your presentation. Sue, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we'll move into the operating budget now. Just before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about assessment growth. I know I've kind of touched on this briefly. We know that 2021 was supposed to be a reassessment year. We know that's not happening. So the only growth that we will be seeing to our assessment in 2021 is associated with growth. And what growth is, growth can be an increase or a decrease, and it is associated with a change in property state, use, or condition. So if a house burns down and they eliminate the assessment for that building, that's a decrease in assessment, that's a decrease in value or growth. If someone builds a new house, that is an increase in growth. So our preliminary growth figure for 2020 is about $1.9 million in assessment. So I have factored that into the calculations for our 2021 levy. And the operating budget as presented includes a 2.5% tax rate increase. And what that equals is about $45 per $100,000 of assessment. So someone who has a $200,000 house will be looking at a $90 increase in their property taxes for 2021. Just some other, I haven't gone through every single department here. What I have tried to do is highlight where there are significant changes in operations from prior years or where we have specific projects that we want to do within the department. But just some highlights for our general revenue. So we do know, just a reminder, our OMPF funding is staying the same as it was in 2020. And we are proposing to maintain our reserve transfers to the landfill reserve, the equipment reserve, and our facilities reserve. There is a proposal in here to add to our CGIS system. There is a business licensing module that is being requested at a cost of $710. And we do know that our MPAC levy is staying the same for 2020. Mayor and Council operating budget. You'll see a transfer from the NWMO reserve interest for year 3 of 3. This will be the final year for the donation to the North Shore Health Network Foundation's digital X-ray suite. Say that 10 times fast when your mouth is dry. Also included in the operating budget for Mayor and Council is some new options for eScribe for a total of $25,000. So that includes our webcasting, closed captioning, and the vote manager. So those are proposed for 2020. And as was previously identified, we are hopeful this will stay the same, a slight decrease in our physician recruitment from 2020 to 2021 at $1,000. Within the administration operating budget, we're looking to increase the transfer to the elections reserve from 5,000 to 10,000. We're looking at some electronic options for the election in 2022, and there are going to be increased costs associated with that. Also included is $4,000 for some HR software to help us manage some of our HR issues. And from the service delivery review, the next item, we have included a proposal, and it is attached to your documentation as a proposal from KPMG for a user fee study to help us determine where our user fees really should be at. We kind of, every year we say, well, we're going to increase our user fees by X, or we're not going to increase our user fees this year, but we really don't know what our user fees should be at for in any of our areas. So this proposed study would be to identify for us and give us some targets so that every year we know what our proposed increases need to be to get us to where we should be charging for our user fees. What's not included in the operating budget is any additional funding for dedicated IT support. Economic development has included $10,000 for downtown enhancements, and the $30,000 CIP grant money for 2021 has already been approved by council. What's not included in the economic development budget is any funding for the EDO position, nor is there any funding for the BRNE project. The courthouse, the rental agreement with the province has been terminated at this point. There will be some minor expenses for utilities until the building can be demolished. We'll hopefully keep those to a minimum. Within the protective services budget, if you're looking at the wage line within the administration, I have reallocated the wages for the building assistant to admin, as that is really where most of her time is being spent, as opposed to just on building related issues. There's a request for the fire permit module for CGS at $710. We do know that our OPP billing is decreasing. Building permit fees were initially budgeted fairly conservatively, but we are going to revisit that with the department and make sure that those revenues are more in line with what they should be, regardless of what situation we find ourselves in next year. So there will be some additional revenues there. Within the animal control budget, we do have the pet tag module, $710. Parking meter collection, again, this budget is also conservative, as we don't know what's going to happen as far as 2021 and will businesses be open, will people be downtown. It's higher than what we've seen so far in 2020, but still conservative compared to the 2020 budget. Public Works budget, we'll see this is year 3 of 3 for the street scan funding. We still are including our annual transfer to the bridge reserve. There's a proposal to we need some crushing done. The crushing contractor generally runs around $60,000. We do have $30,000 set aside to put towards that within the roads reserve. And within the urban storm budget, there's a new line for vac truck contractor. Landfill, we are looking to do some work with our engineers around surface water management. $25,000 engineering and estimated $75,000 for construction. This is related to the landfill expansion, so we are proposing that this full amount be funded from the landfill reserve. Granary Lake and Matinenda Landing, we do have some minimal dollars in here for installation and removal of docks. One of the other things that was attached to your package was a list of requests from the Matinenda Cottage Owners Association. And I will just say at this point that there is a proposal coming to the next council meeting with some recommendations from the Corporate Services Committee with respect to Matinenda. So we may want to just wait until the council meeting before we decide anything related to the Matinenda Landing. The Arena and Community Center, obviously with the installation of the new boiler and water heater system at the arena, we are anticipating a decrease in utility costs next year. We have included our ongoing transfer to for the ice surfacer replacement. And one of the other things we'll be monitoring more closely this year is the actual costs associated with the outdoor rink. We did a little bit of this last year with tracking of staff wages, but we're also going to be looking at equipment costs and water costs and all of those other costs that are actually go along with the rink, so we can get a much better idea of what it's actually costing to provide that outdoor rink. Our parks, trails, and playgrounds budget, this budget probably is one of the biggest increases from 2020's budget. And this reflects the actual level of service that was provided in 2020 for this section. It seems to be where everyone was happy with how everything looked. Everything was neat and tidy and well maintained. So we have left the wages for this, what our actuals were for 2020. And there is also $22,000 included in here for pea gravel to help to bring our play structure surfaces up to code. Palace Theater, I've not at this time budgeted for any revenues, as we don't have an anticipated opening date for the theater. The marina and the museum, I've tied these two together because they're both in the same place. So the marina specifically, we are budgeting for reduced revenues in 2021, again due to the ongoing COVID related restrictions. With the museum being more permanently located in the marina building than that was originally anticipated, what we've decided makes more sense is for the utility costs of the building to be charged directly to the museum instead of the marina charging the museum rent. The museum will be charged directly for costs associated with utilities and insurance for the building. There may be a small chargeback to the marina for some areas, but it makes more sense to do it that way than the other way around. Festivals, we currently have no funding for any festivals in the 2021 budget. At this point, we do not have any staff that are committed to running festivals, so there is at this point nothing in the budget for festivals for 2021. The travel center, just a reminder of Karen's presentation that she made to the committee earlier. So based on the committee's direction, what we have included in the 2021 budget is funding for 2 students, partially offset by grants, funding for 1 full-time position, funding for display units, shelving, furniture, those sorts of things, and janitorial costs for the facility. The library, they are requesting an increase in their municipal contribution of $12,000 over the 2020 level. This works out to, well, originally 8%, but what they have not included in their request is the $7,800 of costs associated with the building. So this actually would bring their request to almost $20,000 more than 2020, or almost 14% increase in contribution from the town. Big thing in the cemetery budget, we have added $50,000 to commence with some tree remediation work that we know needs to be done. This will not solve all of the issues with the trees, but it will get us started on dealing with some of the more serious issues. So bottom line, based on the 2.5% tax rate increase, we've already talked about needing to find $887,000 in capital. Operating right now, we would need to find $17,000, which I think we can quite easily do if we look at the library and reducing the library contribution and increasing our building revenues. That's all I have for here. Some questions. Are there additional services that need to be added? Is the committee happy with the 2.5% tax rate increase?
Thank you, Sue. Councillor Summers, followed by Councillor Roy.
Okay, so just getting back to the library, so they're asking for more than what they asked for 2020. They wouldn't have spent what they had from 2020, I'm guessing?
That is correct.
So do we know how much how much money they have left over from this year's budget? Probably in the package here.
Roughly, yeah, it won't be exact because obviously we're not to the end of the year yet. But we are looking at
And I was kind of wondering why there was a zero disbursement from the town to the library in that field for the library. So I was wondering why it said zero.
So to answer Councillor Summers' question first, right now the library has spent about $95,000 and their transfer request was about $127,000. So there will be a surplus there this year. And to address Councillor Postvero's question, the transfer is a book entry and we usually leave it till closer to the end of the year before that entry gets posted. It was also delayed this year because we did want to have the conversation with council about looking at the 2020 contribution and perhaps setting aside the money that the library did not need for operations this year, set that aside to perhaps address some of the building related issues that will need to be addressed going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Roy.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure if I unmuted that little square. Okay, two things. Library. Last year they asked for extra and they got it, even though we asked everybody else to tighten their belts, and that nobody else got their full budget last year that I can recall. The library did, and then of course COVID hit and they've got extra. There's no way in heck I'm going to authorize or be on their side and say, yes, we're going to give you extra. As a matter of fact, I'd like to cut their budget. So they have to learn, just like the rest of us, that there's only so much money to go around. We can't just throw that money at them just because they put their hand out or they come in and bully us like was I think, last year. So that's my rant on that one. Secondly, because of COVID, I'm not even sure that we're not going to have festivals, first of all. We just said so, which means that there is no summertime events whatsoever again this year. We may end up doing some more, virtual stuff. Why would we open the TIC, especially with a full-time person, when we had talked about having an EDO, and the EDO would be in there, as far as I would think, and so that they could, send people to different businesses in Blind River, and let them know about what the niceties are of our town. So I can't see putting in a full-time position, and I understand that there could be a position from somebody we already have working at the museum, or had, but just to keep another job when we still don't have an EDO. So I think that our priority should be on economic development. And as far as the TIC building, yeah, by all means, open if you want. But I just can't see putting in somebody in there, paying them extra wages, and still not have an EDO position. So if we're going to do that, we should have the economic development officer in there, and maybe that would help our town flourish even more. So that's my second rant. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roy. Councillor Posterero, did you have your hand up?
Yes, please. And sorry for jumping in there in the library, but I knew if I didn't say it, I was going to forget it because I was on that page. So I was just crunching these numbers and I'm looking at it, and I know we like to get nitpicky, but I'm looking at some of the big ticket items and how much money we lose every single year on some of them. And thinking of the service delivery review and how we need to, you know, it might be painful, but we need to sharpen our pencils on some of these items. So looking at the expense over revenue. So like on the arena alone in 4 years, we've lost $1.6 million. The marina, we've lost $333,000. Timber Village Museum, we've lost $346,000. And the Travel Information Center, we've lost $78,000. So looking at those, that's about like $2.4 million in just 4.4 years. I'm just wondering, like, without getting operational, is there a way that we can sharpen our pencils and still provide the services, but on a leaner budget? Because we're bleeding money in those four things alone. So the arena, the marina, the travel, the Timber Village Museum, and the TIC, like those are huge costs. So we're looking at little things that we're cutting, but how could we be more efficient while providing the same kind of services? Because that's a lot of money that we're losing every single year. So on average, we're losing $450,000 a year on the arena, 90 on the marina, and anywhere from 55 to 155 a year on the Timber Village Museum, and anywhere from 15 to 28 per year on the Travel Information Center. So how can we sharpen our pencils so that the operating expenses of those services can be reduced?
Ms. Bittner, would you like to respond to that?
I can respond to that and spend the evening responding to that. We'll break them down. I'll start with each facility. So the arena, as KPMG referenced in the public meeting as well as to council, the arena is, although not an essential service such as public works, it is an expected service in Northern Ontario and most Ontario communities. Most municipalities have an arena. It's the reason people choose to live in those particular communities. What I would do is urge council to take a look at the municipalities that have closed their arenas or have had arenas closed due to service failure and see the effect on their municipalities. It's not possible.
I'm absolutely not saying to close it, but we need to sharpen our pencils somehow because $1.6 million is flowing out the door.
If I can continue, please. So the piece with this though is arenas are not meant to operate at a net neutral or a zero balance. They are meant to lose money every single year. They're also the reason that you're able to retain your population and keep your people active. So although the arena might look like it's hemorrhaging, the word that was used tonight, over $400,000, by keeping your people active, it's actually preventing folks going to the hospital, being obese, having peace of mind, staying positive. So where you notice the reductions are actually in your policing costs, your healthcare costs, and your other social services. So where you notice those dropping in other areas of your budget, it's actually due to people's mental health and physical literacy not being compromised due to having a lack of recreation opportunities. We also know within Blind River, our options are limited for indoor winter activity, whether it is to go and watch a hockey game, whether it's to go skating, whether it's a grandparent taking a child to the arena for their activities. So the arena is more than a black and white variance report. There's a lot of community attributes that feed off it. But again, it is the role of council to decide the level of service. So right now we operate 7 days a week and we take care of roughly 10 user groups. If it is the wish of council to reduce the services, council needs to let us know as operations staff which user groups you're not prioritizing, so then we can let them know that their use is not valued at the community center at this time. And then we can work on reducing our staffing as well as the service that we provide. But again, that would be the role of council to let administration know what they want to keep and which services are valued. The marina, of course, we can work on making it more efficient, and we've actually done that by allocating the costs to the appropriate department. So the marina was actually paying higher taxes, or is paying higher taxes, while we research efficiencies with MPAC and our treasurer, because the marina has been paying a higher rate. We haven't done our part to reach out and share that the museum is now on the property. So there's actually a cost savings by registering it as a shared site, and that the museum and the art gallery are there. It's going to result in a lower burden for our tax base. So as we get more efficient and we go through the growing pains of moving an entire facility to a home, we can start to find more and more efficiencies. As such, we can also continue to apply for more funding to support the property, which is what your administration has done to work on the capital pressures, which has saved our ratepayers close to $500,000 by the time 2021 is rolled through. So what we can do is make sure that we have infrastructure that is of the highest quality, so then we can increase our user fees to match the environment that we're marketing. It's not reasonable to expect people to double up on their user fees and their slip fees and seasonal agreements if we're not offering a quality product that isn't caving into the lake. But the administration, with council approving some of the applications that were submitted this year, have resulted in those payouts. So we will begin to see some major traction next year to improve those sites. The museum is getting more and more efficient. I'm sure Sue will be including in a slideshow later on how the museum was successful with actually achieving 100% student funding, which was a huge efficiency, reducing the burden off our ratepayers this year. We were also successful with an additional $20,000 in funding to offset our pressures. And we have even more funding that's coming through. So we have ongoing applications that are being submitted to do everything we can to sharpen our pencil and reduce the strain on our ratepayers. Same thing with the travel center. We've been successful with grants for that facility so we can release the burden from our taxation. The return to opening equipment, all of the surfactants. We have COVID response items. What else did we get? We have close to $30,000 in wages that we've been successful with to offset those pressures for operating next year, because it was the appetite, or has been assumed by staff because of council's positive response in previous meetings for their appetite to see the travel center open, that we went to work right away to find money to offset the pressures on our taxation, which is also why you're seeing that although the capital is close to $900,000 over, your operating budget is only hovering around a $17,000 discrepancy, because your operations staff are actually doing what they're supposed to make sure that is balanced. So we need to make sure that we're not misconstruing the capital need with our operating. Those are two very different creatures. So that said, what we can do to improve though, is we make sure that we're cross-training our workers. We make sure that we don't have these silos continuing, so people can work in different departments. People have different skills. No longer are we at one desk and we have one job. And that's what's been happening through the departments, where you see a lot of extra teamwork and a lot of people in different facilities because they're learning how to operate. And with more eyes, you actually find efficiencies. We talk about new ways of doing things. That's also referenced in the KPMG report, where you have an entire staffing complement that is actually eager to see change and takes on efficiency measures without being directed because they want to see funds saved. So those steps are actually already in motion. I know the numbers are scary, but they're improving every single year, and these services are valued by the municipality. They're in the strat plan. So I guess that's all I'm trying to say is The facilities, yes, everything can continue to get better, but they're operating as they should.
Who's next?
Follow up?
Jennifer, would you like to go ahead?
Just a quick follow up. Yeah, for sure. These are critical services that we have in our community that, yes, the balance sheet is not, because our ROI is the people that come into our community, spend time in our community, spend money in our community. But what I'm wondering for improvement as well is, are we charging enough fees? Like, is that an area of improvement where maybe we need to increase fees to kind of get more finances to pay for these facilities?
And to Sue Dent and then to Katie.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. So that is the purpose of the user fee study, is to determine where our user fee rates need to get to in order to be the most efficient that we can be, to ensure that we're charging what we should be charging. Are we within, where are we compared to other municipalities in Northern Ontario? Is it reasonable that something be 100% user funded or not? And once we have all of those ideas and numbers, then when we get to the point of looking at our user fee bylaw every year, council will already decided, yes, so we're moving from X to Y for user fees for the arena, and that means an X% increase every year, and we know that we're working towards charging the fees that we should be charging. That is the purpose behind the user fee study that's proposed in the operating budget for 2021.
And Katie, did you want to add anything?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe Ms. Dent reiterated everything that I was going to say. That's the purpose of wanting to have this fees review done. I think that council, when we look at fees and raising fees, there's the not the appetite to raise the fees. There's not the appetite to raise the water fees. There's not the appetite to raise the user fees, but then come back to staff and say we need to find efficiencies in the department. So I think having a third party review these fees and bring our fees up to where they should be, rather than us giving away our services for free, which we did in the past, which also has been an issue of bringing up the levels where we need to be. So I think, you know, where we were 8 or 9 years ago, we're definitely in a better position than we were then. So it doesn't happen overnight. We are working towards that. And I think by having this fees review structure will definitely improve the overall bottom line, so that there's a user pay system and users are paying for the services that they're utilizing.
And Councillor Posterero?
Okay. And to go along with that user fee study, the proposal by KPMG is $75,000. Is that a reasonable amount? Like, I know as soon as they see municipality, they're like cha-ching, but so $75,000 to do a study.
It's not $75,000.
It's not.
Okay, because the one that we have,
35,000.
It should be $35,000.
sorry.
The recommendation is that part of that be funded from the modernization reserve, but the total is $35,000.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it must have been another figure I was looking at.
Councillor Wells, then Councillor Jay Dunbar,
Thank you, Mayor Hammond.
then Councillor Summers.
Just an observation with regard to user fees. I can appreciate the need to study the user fees and compare us to other municipalities, but we are also walking a fine line. You may in fact find yourself raising the user fees so much that users no longer use the facilities. I think perhaps a good example of that is when we switched to water meters, because we noticed that once we started metering the water, we had a reduction in water consumption because people were trying to save their water. So even though we're charging a user fee for the water, we're encouraging conservation, but on the other hand, we're collecting this revenue too. So I agree with Councillor Posterero as well, that perhaps we should also be looking at the operational budget as well. That I don't think an increase in user fees itself is going to save us in terms of the long term. I think we need to have a more of a balanced approach. And I'd like to thank Councillor Pacheco for earlier comment.
And thank you, Councillor Wells. Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll give it to Deputy Mayor Summers first, please. She can go ahead and speak.
Sorry, I'm just looking at these sheets and I'm having some there's some confusion here to me, because there's a salary line and then there's benefit line, which I get that. But then there's like bereavement, stat holidays, and vacation pay. So I would expect that when I'm looking at the salary line, it would be the amount less bereavement, less vacation. Is that not correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So I assume you're looking at perhaps like the Public Works budget?
Yeah, the Public Works admin.
Administration. Yeah, so the salary line there would include the director and the foreman.
Okay.
Then all of the Public Works staff wages are allocated out over the various different areas, so bridges, roads, sidewalks, whatever.
And all their stuff comes in there.
If they take vacation or their stat holiday pay or bereavement leave, we can't allocate those to a specific department because they don't work all in one department. So all of those costs for those wages get allocated to the administration budget.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, that
And
makes sense.
that's the same for all of the admin budgets.
Yes. Okay, I
It's the
get
same.
that. So, and I think I asked about CS, is that community services or something? CS admin, so that's 5011.
Yeah, so that's
So you kind of see that here, there, and everywhere. And I think I question, what is that exactly? Who is that? Like,
So
where?
that-
Who does that entail? I'm not
So
saying
that-
who
that
is
is-
that, but
that's Karen and her staff. So the arena, marina, museum. So
so I guess the same
Yeah,
thing
same
here,
thing.
because I'm looking at the administration, 46,000 for salaries, and yet vacation pay is 48,000. So I was like, whoa.
yeah,
So same idea then, because
same
that would be
idea.
her staff, the staff from the arena and stuff, their vacation would be in there as well.
Yes, that's correct. And Ms. Bittner's salary is split between community services as administration and economic development. So that's why the salary line looks low, because it's not her full-time salary.
Yeah, yeah.
But
yeah,
yes,
I-
all of her staff vacation and stat pay is included in that.
Okay, and I did figure
Budget.
that. And then I guess the other thing is, I know we did discuss about the position at the travel center, and while I'm thrilled to have the travel center open and have a full-time staff there, I'm not totally sure that the position, the salary that we would be paying this person warrants what we're actually looking for. I don't know that we need someone quite as high as that in as far as salaries go. That's my own personal opinion. I think we could have an ambassador there making a fair bit less than what there is. I know there was lots of things on the list, things to do, which is coming from somebody. So I'm not sure who's doing that position now. But it's just a comment. Okay, and I'm done. Thanks, Jim.
Can we defer to Karen and Katie before we go to your comment, Jim?
Okay.
Karen?
Oh, I'm sorry, you froze. Katie, are you first? Go ahead.
I was just going to note that with regard to the position at the information center, I just wanted to clarify, because I think there's some confusion around this, even though we did speak about it at the corporate services meeting the other day. This position is not just an information person who's going to greet people when they come in the door. This was meant to be a position that we could utilize as an ambassador to the community, who would be upselling our Main Street businesses, as well as our highway business, all of our businesses, and all of our local attractions. It was also the intent to alleviate some of the plate of our Director of Community Services, who currently is writing all of our grants, who is currently running an arena, who is currently running a museum, who is trying to get this up and running, who is doing the CIP. So this would be more of a role where they would be writing grants and looking at taking some of those positions or some of that workload off of the director role. So enhancing our economic development and enhancing our tourism, which is the two #1 things within our strat plan. So that was the intent of the position. The position was not to be an entry-level summer student position, which I don't think is what we wanted to look at. When we had the service delivery review done, the information center was a facility that the business model at the time was recommended to close. It was not something that was recommended that we move forward with. However, it was something that the majority of council felt that they wanted to have open and they wanted to make it thrive. So taking that position and building on what the strategic plan said and finding a way to build a business model out of that information center, that was what was used. That was the rationale for coming up with the position that was there. From that, and to maybe alleviate some of the concern, but we had to take that job description and weigh it into our band because we have the Gallagher job band. So we had to weigh it into that. That's where that rate comes from. But I believe Ms. Bittner does have some news to share with regard to that wage and that position as well.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to all of council, based on the 40 notations within the strategic plan that highlight tourism as one of our main economic drivers, the fact that it is the top rung driver on page 6 of the strat plan, tourism enhancement, and then we talk about retail and business, the fact that we need a body in place, and the appetite of council for over a year has been to rejuvenate that center with a new business model. I authored a grant and we found out this morning we were successful. So the municipality is actually going to be compensated close to 80% of the wage for this role based on the strategic plan, based on the service delivery review, and based on all of the previous council meetings and feedback from the majority of the group. So administration went to work authoring this funding application. We do have news, and I apologize, I can't publicly state who the funding agency is, but we do have it in writing, and that bylaw will be going to council to be signed and open, but that will relieve $32,000 from the operating budget and relieve $32,000 of the taxation pressure that council is facing on finding 17 right now. So that actually puts you under over 13.
Okay, so just, that's very good, Karen. I'm really happy to hear that. And really, I'm happy to hear the economic development words in there as well, because that's sort of what we were looking for as well. So it's kind of fits into both areas, right? Thank you.
And Councillor Jay Dunbar, you've been very patient.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know necessarily if you're going to like what I'm going to say, but I mean, I'm understanding it this way. You know, like we're on a shortfall, and we're quite a bit of money, and we're trying to make these hard decisions and these cuts. And pertaining to, you know, this last item we've been talking about for the last two people here, you know, that's an individual, and I don't want to get into any trouble because I think, you know, now you're touching upon personnel and maybe possibly in camera. And, you know, this is going to be difficult for this council to, you know, to make some of these decisions. I get it. And I believe that this council, it's going to need to have everything up on the table, and that's including our staff needs. And, you know, as some of us have all worked for companies and organizations that, you know, when they're not meeting their bottom lines and discussions get into heavy cuts, they need to be, staffing needs are also included in these discussions. And we obviously can't, I know, not have a discussion in open on this, but there doesn't seem to be an avenue here, you know, to go in closed. It's not here on tonight's agenda. And so, Madam Mayor, if, you know, I'm going to put a motion on the table, and I'm moving that administration at its earliest convenience holds an enclosed budget meeting, so council has the opportunity to discuss staffing needs and requirements for now and in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar. And are there any other comments from council? Seeing none, I just had a few points that I would like to make. As people know, I've not, I go on record as saying that travel information centers are going the way of the dodo bird. We are one of the few communities in Northern Ontario that has a travel information center. The center in Wawa is closing and they have no intentions of going forward. What they do look at is a possibility of having touch bars where individuals can go and touch a bar. It's part of an IT upgrade, so it's something that could be looked into. I think because there's a lot of reference to both the strat plan and the service delivery review. So if we're staying on course with the service delivery review, it references an EDO. And quite possibly, we could change the name of this tourist ambassador to be an economic development officer with the flavor that tourism is part of those responsibilities. And maybe that would make it look like we are going forward as opposed to going backward in time. I just want to also bring up, we want to make sure that our IT needs are met. I have Pam beside me here because screens are not cooperating like I'd like them to, but I think it's really important for the staff. You know, we're getting an awful lot of software included in our packages, but it's not really fair to the existing staff that they should have to, you know, play a number of different roles and not roles that is necessarily in their comfort zone. So I'd really like to explore that IT position. The EDO position is certainly part of our service delivery review. And as I say, maybe we could do a bit of a massage with tourist ambassador / EDO, and then we're on track with the service delivery review. I have a concern. It's a lovely flashy screen, the one where we've got concessions at the Tourist Information Center. I know that the consignment items are all specifically Blind River, but I do have a concern that if people stop at the Tourist Information Center to pick up something, they may not go to our downtown core. I guess we have to try it before we find out for sure, but it is a concern for me. I also want to remind us that our goal for this council and in our vision boards that we looked at in September was to change the wells from Lake Huron. And right now we can't get a delegation because we're not doing anything to show improvement in that area. So, you know, going back to our vision boards and what we said about our water intake, I think it would be a nice goal of this council to position us so that we can go forward and get a delegation possibly at AMO next year and work towards getting that water source changed over so that we don't have to think about that mucky water that's going into our treatment plants. So those were the only notes that I had on it, but I think these are some really good discussions. And while you might be feeling a little bit of healthy tension, it's a good thing. So,
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Dunbar.
I believe I put a motion on the table and I don't believe you asked for if there was a seconder to this. I don't mind being defeated, but so I'll ask, is there a seconder to my motion?
You have Councillor Roy. Thank you, Councillor Dunbar. Sorry. I get so excited about being able to talk that I missed that protocol. Sorry about that. And Councillor Wells, you have your hand up?
Me?
Yes.
No, I was just asking the same question. Like I thought Councillor Dunbar made a motion that we just seemed to skip over.
And
You did make a motion, did you not, Councillor Dunbar?
Yes, I did. I'm looking for a seconder.
yes, and I believe Councillor Roy seconded your motion, and all in favor? And that's,
Roll.
sorry?
Sorry, I'd like a recorded vote, Mayor Hagan, if I may ask for one.
Yeah, yes. Pam's going back to her seat. And Katie's going to read this.
Deputy Mayor Summers,
In favor.
Councillor B.A. Dunbar,
In favor.
Councillor J. Dunbar,
In favor?
Councillor Wells,
In favor?
Councillor Roy,
In favor.
Councillor Pastorero,
In favor.
Thank you.
I get a vote too. I get a vote too,
oh,
Councillor.
sorry, Mayor Hagman.
In favor.
I would just like to have some clarification as to what exactly council is looking for me to bring to the meeting.
Well, as I said in the motion here, Pam, I think it gives us an idea for discussion, you know, on our staffing needs and requirements for now and in the future. And if we are looking at cuts, well, this should be also included in the big picture.
So staffing and services.
Yes.
Councillor Summers?
Also, Katie, is it possible to get the wage grids? We haven't seen it for some time and I really don't remember what they look like. Is that possible?
Good idea.
Yes.
Thank you.
And turning the floor back to our treasurer. Sue, is there anything else that you need from council at this time?
I guess the biggest question I have right at this moment is the committee comfortable with the 2.5% tax rate increase, or are we working towards a different number?
And we can go to our deputy mayor
I'm okay with it.
and Councillor B. Dunbar.
I'm okay with it as well. I just have one question about the overall budget. We seem to have we're underspent in the 2020 budget. Can any of those monies, is there any reason why those monies can't be reallocated to cover some of these items in this year's budget?
Through Madam Mayor, yes. So once we get closer to the end of the year and we know what our surplus will be, we do have a surplus deficit policy that determines where those surplus funds are allocated. Some of those places are our tax stabilization reserve, our future projects reserve, our facilities reserve. So those will help with things like all the work we need to do with our facilities. So yes, we do have money in our facilities reserve now. We know we have a lot of work that we need to do going forward. So those funds will be reallocated to projects within the 2021 and beyond.
And Katie, you'd like to respond as well, and then we'll go back to Councillor B. Dunbar.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Dunbar, I didn't mean to jump in. If council is happy with the 2.5%, and if you're looking for recommendations on what to cut from the capital budget, I know that the treasurer and I have had some discussions on this. Would you like to hear what the recommendations are from the treasurer on the capital budget to bring you to an even budget with the 2.5% increase?
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Councillor B. Dunbar, are you okay with that?
I just have one more question.
Go ahead.
I realize that we have a policy about, you know, what we do with leftover funds, but if we made a special policy, or could we at some point say that, you know, this money that we didn't spend from 2020, we will allocate to specific areas, or are we bound by that one bylaw that says it has to go into the reserve funds?
Katie?
Through you, Madam Mayor. That's a good question, Councillor Dunbar. Council sets the policy, therefore council can change the policy. It would not necessarily be the recommendation of staff to do that. We would want to look at what that change is, but you are council, it is your policy. However, it would not be the recommendation.
And Sue?
Thank you.
Sorry, just to clarify, Councillor Dunbar, the only way to transfer the money to next year is to put it into reserve over year end. So whatever reserve that is, it must go to a reserve over year end to be allocated to next year's budget.
Then you could spend it from there.
Councillor B. Dunbar, have your questions been answered? Okay. And I see Councillor Summers has her hand up.
Yeah, just to comment on that, because I agree, Katie, that we shouldn't ever do that, except that this is a very different year because of COVID. And I think that, you know, that might be something that we might want to look at it based on that. Ordinarily, I would not say that we should be looking at doing something like that. But we had sort of, you know, talked about it before, how there in a regular year, we would certainly never want to end up at the end of the year with probably as much money as what we're probably going to end up with this year, because that would not look good, since we asked for a tax increase and then we end up, you know, not spending the money. So I think in a situation like this year, you know, it's something that we might want to look at. That's just the point that I just wanted to make.
And I have Katie and then Sue Dent.
Yes, Councillor Summers, that is correct. It is a different year, definitely. And we do still have, note to council, that we still have almost $300,000 of COVID relief funds allocated as well. So there is a lot of options with this budget. It isn't as bleak as what you're looking at. And I think that, you know, because staff sharpened their pencils this year and took the reins in, that's why we're sitting, or will be sitting, with a surplus in this year's budget. We don't know what those numbers are because we're not at the end of the year. There's still things coming in, but staff really did sharpen their pencils this year, and they really did look at ways to be efficient within the budget. We've also taken all of the direction that we've had throughout these budget meetings and throughout the year from council to put forward this budget that we have with the recommendations that we have put in. But yes, I mean, anything is possible. We can certainly look at that, but we will have to follow some of the regulations that are put forward that Ms. Dent will bring forward to council. That being said, you put it into the reserve at the end of the year, council still has the authority to move the reserves around in 2021 as well. There is options for council.
I am going to be going down the line for sure. Councillor J. Dunbar, you are next.
For the recorded vote, correct?
As we go forward, yes.
Thank you. I'm in favor.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor J. Dunbar?
No, I am fine. Thank you.
And back to Sue.
So I guess I'm a little confused as to what exactly we're referring to then with the reserves. Are we looking for something more?
We're not looking for anything at this point, Sue. They're just asking questions of the possibilities. What I was requesting is for you to maybe put forward some suggestions as to what your recommendation to council would be to cut from the capital to make the capital budget balance.
So is council, before we keep going down the line, is council all right if Sue gives us the list from staff on what they feel could be cut?
Are we voting? Do we not have something on the floor that we're voting on?
We're voting on going for, we're voting on the 2.5% tax.
So is that what we're voting on is that what's on the table right now?
Yes, and what Sue is going to propose for us, in keeping with that 2.5% tax increase, is what she feels we can cut and stay at 2.5%.
Well, can I rescind my vote until I hear what Sue has to say?
Sure.
Okay.
Back to you, Sue.
I don't think we're far off. Our recommendations are mostly in line with what we have heard from members of the committee this evening. My recommendations, or administration's recommendations, to cut from the capital budget would be the sweeper, defer the fire truck, fund the all of the surface treatment programs, so the full $300,000 from the gas tax reserve as opposed to funding any of it from the tax levy. Defer the card lock system and perhaps reduce the pre-engineering budget to $50,000. That's a savings of $888,770. We were looking for $887,000. So that more than meets what we were looking to cut from the capital budget.
And stay at the 2.5%.
And stay at 2.5%, yes.
Are you okay with that, Councillor Jay Dunbar?
Yes, and when will you be able, Sue, at your earliest convenience, to have this in-camera meeting with council or administration, I should say?
We'll have to discuss that with the clerk's department and see what we can set up.
Perfect, thank you.
And Councillor Wells?
Just for clarification, we talked about the 2.5% increase.
Yes?
I could live with it, but I'm also thinking if an ordinary ratepayer who is or will become aware that we are expecting a surplus, and I know, as well as everyone else at the table knows, we have an infrastructure deficit. We have, I've seen the road studies. We know all the deficiencies that we have to deal with. Buildings with leaky pipes that we have to close, the list goes on and on. And I am aware that the other municipalities are increasing their taxes to varying degrees. But my concern is that we still have not seen any end to the pandemic, and that I anticipate, I'm not Dr. Fauci, but I anticipate that we will probably be seeing a continuation of the pandemic until probably the mid of next year. And the impact that that will have on our services, our facilities, remains unknown. And we have now asked for an additional meeting to look at the in-camera meeting, to look at various things that we could operate with cut. And we've heard our treasurer suggest some things that could be removed from the capital budget, including I might suggest a smart board for the council chamber. I think we could live without that for another year. I know we have a policy that we are supposed to attempt to try to pass this budget early in the new year, but I think that we are living in extraordinary times. And I still think maybe I would like more information about how much of a surplus we are going to have. Additional cuts might be made. And as I said, I could live with a 2.5% if necessary, but I know that the current cost of living is not running at 2.5%, but that has no impact upon our infrastructure deficit. I'm aware of that. But I still think even a 2.5% increase will be a difficult number to sell to some of the ordinary ratepayers in town who are aware that we are operating with a surplus and with the pandemic, probably reduced operations. So I still think I would be happy with a 2% increase. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. And Councillor H.P. Roy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I tend to agree with with Councillor Wells. Just that any tax increase right now is going to look like we're grabbing money, because there is, we do have a surplus of cash from last year because a lot of things weren't done. And this coming year, as we've already said, we're not going to have festival events. We may have a few other deals that we aren't going to go through with. So those monies aren't going to be spent. So it's kind of a tough pill to swallow when you put that on, the taxpayer, and you say, we're going to increase your taxes, but you know what, we're going to diminish the services this year, or your fund. I mean, obviously, as Councillor Wells said, we're not going to have a proper summer next year either. We're still going to have COVID out there. We're not going to have large get-togethers. We're not going to be at the town park, listening to music and drinking a beer. It's not going to happen. We're going to have smaller, in-camera deals. We're not spending that extra money. And I know a lot of the bigger stuff still has to be done, like our trucks and so on. But any increase right now is going to be a very tough one to take. Like you said, on $100,000, it's what was it? Was it $90? Is that right? $45. $45. So an assessment of $200,000 is $90. So if a guy is living in a $200,000 home, let's hope that he can afford an extra $90. But somebody living in a lesser home probably can't afford what they're in right now, especially being that unemployment, that they may not be employed or may fear to be employed right now because of COVID. So the money isn't there. Some people are having a tough time putting food on the table. I don't know, I just have a hard time adding anything to the tax burden right now. If council wants to, vote on it and add taxes or increase taxes to people, I guess, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow, but I'll have to go along with it. But at the moment, I think that I'm almost willing to go zero, but if we went 2% or less, I'd be happy with that. I mean, I just can't see burdening people more and more with everything that's going on. So, and really, if we have that surplus, do we really need the 2%, or 2.5%? Can we get by without it? That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Roy. I'm seeing the lifeline of Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I tend to agree, and I'm glad I rescinded my vote. If I recall, and it's probably recorded, and that's even before I knew of the reserve or the extra money that we haven't spent, I think I initially wanted a 2% increase, and we worked our way down from 3.5 to 2.5. So I'm in agreement with the other two councillors that I would like to see it at 2%. And we all know the reasons why that were eloquently said here tonight by the other two councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar. And Councillor Pastorero?
So I think I'm reflecting the sentiments that have come before me. But again, I would just like to see what our surplus is so that we could have a more realistic view on what perception. But the thing is that we do need to raise our taxes to pay for the services that we're providing. And although that there is a surplus, we're talking about moving money around. We have this huge infrastructure project that we want to undertake with a new water source. So any kind of surplus, no matter where it moves, it's moving somewhere where maybe we can save some funds to move towards this water source, which is our ultimate goal. So I understand times are tough and services are greatly reduced. Talking about the mental health, I went to go book public skating and it's already sold out. So that's not even an option, right? So, so I understand that our services are drastically cut, but we have to also understand that we want all these things. So we need to pay for them somehow. So 2.5, I understand it's COVID, but that's pretty decent. But I would like to wait and see what the surplus is. But from my understanding, the kind of budget draft that we have now is based on 2.5, correct? And so if we want to cut that another 5%, there's more things that are going to have to come off the table.
Excuse
I
me,
know-
0.5%, Councillor, not 5%.
No, 0.5. Yep. So if we're going to cut that 0.5, that's more things that are need to come off the table. But I just did have a quick question with the e-scribe, and I know it seems trivial now after we're talking about such important things. Is there was the one thing that is the webcasting. What are those fees are $13,000. What is that in comparison to what we pay now for our Zoom subscription?
I think Sue is looking for that for you, Jennifer. Is there anything else that you wanted to add while it's being looked at? And I'll put my 2 cents in.
I just think that, like, you know, we are in COVID times, but we also need to build our funds in order to get the infrastructure that we desire, right? If we continue to avoid that, we're going to be in a mess.
Thank you. Just while we're waiting for Sue to come back, I recall at the last budget meeting that council agreed to the 2.5%, which is why our treasurer had done a lot of work to get this presentation for us tonight. I also recall last year that we had a graph showing where we were in 2012, and there was a huge dip in taxes in between 2012, 2018. And we're trying to get the tax rate the same as it was back in 2012. I don't believe that we're there yet. And so while we're trying to do a small creep, 2.5% isn't big in the big picture of things, bringing us back to that 2012 rate. And so if we can think into the future, if we can go, 2.5% this year, take a look at where we're at the end of 2021 and possibly going into an election year. I know people don't care about it, but it is something that people look forward to in an election year, that maybe then is the time to go with the 2%. But I know that our treasurer's done an awful lot of work to get us to the 2.5% increase. And I know that the managers and the directors have all been asked to cut corners wherever possible to try and keep our costs down. So, and I do apologize to council if I'm kind of missing people. I have 2 excuses. One, my screen only shows 4 people, and my second one is that my stepmother-in-law died last night, and I'm going on no sleep. So those are my 2 excuses for council. I won't use those ever again. So are there, Sue, are you able to come back and give us the figures of eScribe versus Zoom?
Yeah, so Zoom does not cost us a lot of money. It's a little over $700 a year. But the other thing that council needs to keep in mind is that Zoom isn't necessarily going to meet our OADA requirements as far as making council meetings fully accessible to everybody. The webcasting and the closed captioning would go a long way to meeting those requirements that we need to make these meetings accessible to everybody, not just people who can join us on Zoom.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments from council? Councillor Pastorero.
Thank you. I didn't know if you could see me. I'm like,
I'm looking at 2 computers right now.
I'm not tech savvy, so maybe, Sue, could you help me with the difference between the Zoom and the webcasting, just because I'm 700 to 13,000. So what are the accessibility, like, because I'm definitely for equity. So So what are the accessibility differences between the two platforms?
I'm actually going to defer this to the deputy clerk because she is the one who's been researching this project.
I think everybody should be able to hear me, right? I should be close enough. So the Zoom doesn't provide any closed captioning. The webcasting through eScribe will allow us to host it separately, not on the Zoom servers. They'll have their own. It will embed closed captioning, and it will, when we create our minutes, if somebody's watching the video afterwards and they just want to go to item 10.2, they can jump right to that part in the video. They won't, whereas Zoom, you're going to have to watch it or just keep fast forwarding until you find that spot.
Councillor Jay Dunbar.
Yeah, and I think also, you can tell me, Pam, if I'm wrong or not, there are now our IT people that they take care of this here webcast, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we
There
went
you go,
with,
folks.
there's two options for the webcasting. One had more onerous on what staff, probably myself, would have to do. Whereas the other one is all hosted by eScribe. It's basically a plug and play system like we sort of have now for getting it on channel 10. You just flip a switch and you're live.
Yeah, and if I may add, Madam Mayor, there's been a lot of people asking for the streaming over the years. And I guess our biggest hang up, was we were looking at live streaming, hiring an IT person. And look at the years we've been trying to utilize neighboring communities, IT people, and you can't. And so for a service like the live streaming of this year webcast, plus if you include the IT people, I think the $10,000 IT person that we're getting here is quite a bargain. And this could be looked at further down at another budget, that if we ever want to cancel it, I guess we can.
That would be up to council.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Wells.
Well, thank you, Mayor Hagman. I guess this is questions for the deputy clerk. I'm just trying to kind of wrap my head around what's happening here, and I don't want to be operational from a technical sense, but if we're using eScribe, then the broadcast would be embedded within eScribe. We wouldn't be using Zoom.
Correct.
And then if and when the time comes that we're back in the chamber, then we would have some sort of web camera there to continue broadcasting live from the chamber. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's going to work right with our existing system is the plan.
Okay, and I would assume that I have heard stories about Zoom that the eScribe platform would probably be more secure than the Zoom platform would be.
Absolutely.
Councillor Pastorero.
I promised last techie question. So Pam, so can the viewing audience, they can access it from any device? I think that's the only thing I'm concerned about, because with eScribe, I could only get it on my iPad, but for viewing, they can use any device?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council as it relates to this budget? Katie?
So I just wanted to confirm for council that currently, if you accepted the recommendations from the treasurer with the cuts, that brings you to a balanced capital budget. And with the increase to the building department and with the offset of the funding that we've received, your operational is also balanced. Are you now directing us to come back with a 2% rather than a 2.5?
I think we need to do a vote on that. So I will start with Deputy Mayor Summers.
Oh, this is a tough one now, listening to the others talk about it. I think I'm going to still go with the 2.5. I think, again, just listening to what you'd said, Sally, about the prior years. I think we are caught up at this point, but I mean, we don't want to get ourselves in that hole again. So I think I will go with the 2.5.
Thank you. And Counselor B. Dunbar?
That really is a hard decision. I think I have to go with the 2%.
Okay, thank you. And Counselor J. Dunbar?
2%.
Counselor Wells?
As I said earlier, I'm supportive of the 2%, but I also realize that we've asked for more information at another meeting. So I guess I'm concerned about we're putting an additional burden on our treasurer. But 2%.
And Counselor H.P. Roy?
I said it earlier, to 2%. If everybody else wanted 2.5, I would have followed them, but I'm good with 2%. I know it's going to make more work for Sue, and I apologize, but it's one of those years. I'm sorry.
Counselor Pastorero? Can't hear you. Your mute's on.
I said in the grand scheme of things, when you're looking at a 0.5%, really we're making our treasurer do this work for a few dollars. So really what, I'm fine with the 2.5.
And I'm fine with the 2.5 as well. Counselor Wells?
Sorry, I was muted. I'm not quite sure about the distribution of the vote, so can I ask that we have that recorded, please?
Right now, the 2% are 4 to 3. 2% has that four votes, and 2.5% has 3 votes. Counselor Roy?
What's the difference of the 0.5%? How much money is that?
About $30,000.
Then so just leave it at 2.5. I'm sorry, but I don't want to raise those taxes, but for $30,000, if we're going to make our treasurer go back and do all this work for 0.5%. If we are all in favor, and all, I mean all, then, I feel bad having our treasurer do all this extra work for 0.5%.
So I think in fairness to council, we should go back and do a recorded vote. And I'm going to pose it all to each one, whether I'm going to say, are you in favor of 2.5%? And your response can be either yes or no. Everyone clear on that? Councillor Wells?
We are planning on another meeting, though, are we not?
We are planning on another meeting. It's just a question of our treasurer still has to go back to the drawing board and give us a few more items based on what we've said tonight. And it would really help her if we can give her a definitive, isn't that correct, Sue? On the tax increase.
It would be more helpful, but it's not insurmountable.
I was told once by someone else that 0.5% was more like $50,000 on the roll, but maybe I'm mistaken.
No, that would be closer to 1%.
Councillor Roy?
How hard would it be to find $30,000 to knock off this budget? I mean, doesn't look like there's much. $30,000 is not a lot to knock off the budget, is what I'm going to say. So we should be able to do it. So I know as I'm bouncing back and forth, I hate making our treasurer do more work, and that's a big thing. But I really don't want to raise it 2.5. well, we will if we have to.
Sally?
Sorry, Deputy Mayor Summers.
I'm just thinking that we needed 17,000 or something for the operating, and I believe we're already over, with what the savings were that Sue just mentioned, we're already over that anyway, so she's probably got some of that 30,000 extra 0.5% already in there, so there might not be even as much as that to do it. So I think, sorry, Sue, I think I'll go with 2% as well.
Why you pay me the big bucks.
So again, on the recorded vote, I'm going to continue with the question of, are you in favor of 2.5%, which was what was on the books from the last meeting? And you can say no, and we can go from there. Okay? Everybody all right? Is that okay? Will that help you, Sue?
Katie had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, one screen, yeah.
I'm just going to suggest that we have to do it anyways. Why don't we come back with a budget of 2.5 and one for 2.0 and council look at it from there rather than going back and forth with the 2.5. For 5%, it's Sue and I can sit down and review the budget and come back with a 2.5 and a 2.0 and council can decide from there.
Sounds good. Council okay with that? Thumbs up? Okay, good. All right. Is there anything else that council wants to speak to as it relates to this agenda? Councillor Dunbar?
Thank you very much, Sue, Katie, and all staff for their diligence and all the hard work they put into this.
Absolutely. And on that note, I would like to see a motion to adjourn.
You have 8.1, no?
Oh, sorry. I thought we had talked about that as part of the rest of the meeting. Is there anything else you wanted to add on the 8.1? I thought that we were talking about that as part of the course of this meeting.
I think we might address that, Madam Mayor, in camera.
Yeah, that was what I had thought.
Yeah.
That's going to be part of our meeting next week. And we don't have an addendum, so can we put forward a motion to adjourn? Oh, Councillor Wells.
With regard to 8.1, I'd like to make a motion that we defer that to the next meeting.
And
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's carried.
Also, Sue had her hand up.
Sorry, yes, that was just to say we should probably at least defer 8.1 if we're not going to deal with it this evening.
Sounds good. Right, now we're on to motion to adjourn. And I'm watching two screens here. Oh, there we go. And Councillor Postrero, seconded by Councillor Roy, all in favor. And carried. Thanks, everyone. And again, thank you to the staff for all your hard work and your patience with us. We'll get there, and we're way ahead of a lot of other municipalities, so that's a good thing. Have a good evening, everyone.